Welcome to an exceptionally special edition of Black Man Spy, and we have some real flash traffic for you. As you might have recalled, about 2 months ago, we did an episode called The Prigozhin Paradox, and we had a couple of follow-ups to it. Today's episode is called The Prigozhin Explosion, and that's because Vladimir Putin's former ally, confidant, and head of PMC Wagner exploded in midair, fell out of the sky, and as of reporting right now, is most likely most sincerely dead. So, what has finally happened was what me, you, your dog, the uncooked Christmas turkey that you have in your freezer have all predicted was that Yevgeny Prigozhin would technically fall out of a window. And if you can consider that that window was at about 25,000 feet and part of an executive jet, you would have guessed correct. But Prigozhin certainly did wake up a dead man after his little aerial nap with video that we're seeing right now of him and the PMC Wagner's top commanders, including Putin, the neo-Nazi the Russian, covered with neo-Nazi tattoos all over his body, and 8 other senior commanders of PMC Wagner, all boarded a flight in Moscow and flew into a Russian air defense missile, which successfully intercepted the missile, blew up, knocked the tail off the aircraft. It spiraled to the ground, killing everyone on board. The only way to put this is Vladimir Putin holds a mean grudge. Now, I can't take credit for it, but was CIA Director Bill Burns who said Vladimir Putin is the apostle of revenge. And he exercised supreme vengeance against Yevgeny Prigozhin. But Malcolm, this isn't the first time you've mentioned Prigozhin in all of your writings and podcasts. Where did the first time that it come up? The first time it came up was in 2016 in my book, Plot to Hack America. In fact, Plot to Hack America, my first reference to him was on page 109, where we discuss the Internet Research Agency as it was put together in order to seize control of the American mindset and hack the minds right down to the micro individual level in support of Donald Trump's candidacy. The Internet Research Agency was established in 2013, and the first reporting I saw on it was done by Adrian Chen of the New York Times, where he went to the troll farm that was being operated by Yevgeny Prigozhin. Now, this is also, even though that's the first time I wrote about it, that is not the first time that I had an encounter with PMC Wagner. In fact, I had, right after I left the United Arab Emirates, I had quite a series of run-ins with PMC Wagner. The first of which was in Libya. After the Gaddafi revolution in 2011, I was working out of the United Arab Emirates. I was working in Libya, and how can I put it? An Arab state aligned themselves with a Libyan general, Khalifa Haftar, and they formed an alliance with PMC Wagner and brought in hundreds of Russian mercenaries who had their own air defense systems, who had their own fighter aircraft. They were operating MiG-23s and other aircraft in Libya, and over time would fight against the coalition force that was aligned against them and backed by the United Nations, until a few years later they pulled out of Libya, wasn't financially successful, and they took a lot of casualties. The next time was, of course, during the 2016 election, when it became clear that Prigozhin, also known as Putin Chef, formed the Internet Research Agency and broadened his field from private military contracting into what we call private intelligence contracting, and worked with Russian military intelligence and Russian clandestine service to influence the American election with the Internet Research Agency. The next time I referenced him was in my extensive study of how Russian intelligence was out to dismantle democracy in the West and break American democracy. And Prigozhin moved up in my estimation. He's first referenced on page 58, where we discuss his past with PMC Wagner, his history with Vladimir Putin, and how he planned what the FBI would later go on to call Operation Grizzly Step, but which in 2016, this book, by the way, came out in 2018. In 2016, I had named it Operation Lucky 7. The FBI wins the naming wars on Yevgeny Prigozhin's Internet Research Agency activity to overthrow the American or to influence the American elections in such a way that it would elect Donald Trump. The last time that I would reference him in a book was in my last book, The Plot to Betray America, in which I go over the extensive context between Prigozhin, Vladimir Putin, and I reference another incident that PMC Wagner was involved with, which was when they and an independent Syrian brigade tried to seize an oil field that was controlled by a small special forces ODA, that's a special forces detachment, and our Kurdish army allies, and got 250 PMC Wagner mercenaries and Syrian mercenaries wiped off the face of the earth, burned in their tanks, slaughtered alive by U.S. helicopters, artillery, by a special forces platoon, ODA of 12 to 16 guys who did nothing more than pick up a radio and order their slaughter. That's when PMC Wagner really started coming up into the fold of the American consciousness. Even the Internet Research Agency, even though it was being talked about, it really took the Americans to fight Wagner on the battlefield before Evgeny Prigozhin's name really started coming to the public fore. Enter Prigozhin, PMC Wagner in the Ukrainian war. Last year, during the Kharkiv counteroffensive, the International Legion fought elements of PMC Wagner along with Russian airborne forces and Spetsnaz forces in the Kharkiv counteroffensive. My platoon engaged PMC Wagner in direct combat this last December, which regrettably led to a loss of life of some of our team members. But we found that Wagner, some of their more senior staffers were fighting us, including the fact that we had killed PMC Wagner mercenaries who had been former French foreign legionnaires, including the fact they had been wearing their French camouflage, had all their French Foreign Legion kit, and that the average person in that organization that my platoon engaged was about 50 years old. So it was senior cadre. They did not survive the encounter, even though we had taken casualties. The Wagnerites that we had fought died in that engagement. However, it showed us that there was a different level of professionalism. Then the battles of Bakhmut, where PMC Wagner created penal battalions and started conscripting whoever they could. And that's when even more direct combat with them occurred. And Yevgeny Prigozhin was on the front lines out there doing video podcasts showing their progress into the city of Bakhmut, even though PMC Wagner may have lost as many as 20,000 conscripted and volunteer fighters. But Malcolm, tell us about the uprising that he had 2 months ago. If you go back in the Black Man Spy, you can watch my almost near real-time analysis of the mutiny that Yevgeny Prigozhin and PMC Wagner carried out, where they marched from Rostov-on-Don, seized the command centers, and made their way to within 190 kilometers of outside Moscow. They shot down airliners, killing aircrew. Make a note of that. They engaged police forces, and then, miraculously, Prigozhin announces that he had gotten a deal with Vladimir Putin, and those men were ordered to return to their garrisons. They did. PMC Wagner main force commanders were sent to Belarus. Many others were sent to Africa to facilitate now what we know is the Niger coup d'etat. But many of the others, the rank and file Wagnerites, were turned into regular conscript soldiers, contract soldiers in the Russian main army. They were no longer PMC Wagner. I am firmly of the belief that that was a real mutiny, that it started out as a real mutiny, and as he neared Moscow, Vladimir Putin cut a deal with him, Prigozhin turned it off, and now we see what the reward is for carrying out a mutiny. You fall out of a high window. It's just that Prigozhin had to be blown out of a high window at 30,000 feet and then fall doing what we are now calling the Prigozhin pirouette. Hey, shout out to my buddy Cameron for coming up with that, and blew up and burned on the ground. Moral of this story is you don't cross an ex-KGB officer who has nothing to lose. As Prigozhin was burning his way down to the ground, I'm sure he was giving thought to many of his life choices, most foremost of which was not going on to Moscow and killing Vladimir Putin. Too late for that. He'll have to join Putin in hell some other time. Putin will be coming on an express train at some time soon. But the big question is, what was PMC Wagner turn into now? I'm pretty sure that they are going to dissipate or be absorbed into other private military companies. There are at least 2 other private military companies. Or they are going to be brought 100% to heel, and then they are going to go back to their dirty tricks operations. Only this time, this will be carried out under the control of Russian military intelligence and Russian clandestine service, and they won't be running around pretending like they operate and work for one man who is not Vladimir Putin. So, with that, go back, subscribe to Substack so that you can see my original Prigozhin videos, which are in our archive. You can see the entire discussion about how this all originated, how that mutiny originated, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can see all the videos that we have. But this is going to be the beginning of a new era in Russia. Because when Vladimir Putin can roll up a surface-to-air missile system, track his enemies in the air, and then shoot them down with a surface-to-air missile system, it is a far cry from putting poison in your tea. He wanted to make quite the example of falling out of a high place to everyone in Russia to let them know that he is just as ruthless as they remember him when he blew up apartment complexes and blamed it on the Chechens and killed hundreds of thousands of people in the Chechen War. Vladimir Putin is back, baby. And Yevgeny Prigozhin, well, we don't have to worry about your cremation now, do we? So, stay tuned to the next Black Man Spy. See you then.